Caleb Chapman with the Jazz Education Network, here today with another installment of Beyond the Notes, and today my guest is the legendary Tom Bones Malone. And Tom, thanks for taking time to chat today.
My pleasure, always.
It's great to see you here. Hey, so Tom, you have been a fixture on the music scene for a little bit of time now, and I had the honor of hearing you early in my career of playing an instrument, and it was so motivational to me. And one of the things that always got me excited was how many different instruments you play. I watched the David Letterman show, and one time you'd be playing trombone, and another time trumpet, and then you had a saxophone on your face. How did you come about being proficient on so many different instruments?
Well, I wanted to play the trombone as a young man around 12 years old, and parents couldn't afford to buy me a trombone. So the band director said, well, you can play the tuba. Doesn't cost anything. So I started playing the tuba. And then my grandmother, after playing the tuba for about a year, my grandmother gave me $100 from her Social Security check to buy a trombone. Wow. Somehow that was really the instrument I wanted to play. So I caught on to it pretty quickly. I understood the correlation between the slide positions and the tuba valves, so that allowed me to progress fairly quickly. And then my little brother got a cornet, so when he wasn't playing it, I learned to play that, and it had the same fingerings as the tuba, so I understood some common ground there, so it wasn't like starting at the beginning. I think of all these instruments as being somewhat the same. So then when I was 14, some kids came over to my house, a drummer, a couple of guitar players, and a sax player, and we're going to start a rock and roll band. Do you want to play with us? Sure. I got out my trombone, and they looked at me like I was crazy. and I said, what's up? And they said, you don't have trombones in rock and roll band. And that was true in 1961. Right. So well, what am I supposed to do? Because I wanted to be in the band. I wanted to hang with the guys. I wanted to meet girls. So they said, you got to play saxophone. My best friend had an alto and a tenor with him that night, and he started teaching me how to play saxophone. And I saw some correlations between the brass fingerings and the saxophone fingerings. So this gave me a little bit of a head start. And of course I knew how to breathe from playing the tuba. And we were doing gigs in about 3 weeks. And I remember being on the bandstand, the guitar player says, play a solo. I said, what am I supposed to play? He says, play anything you want. So it was just, my improvisation started right there.
Right.
I was sort of thrown into the swimming pool and
right into the fire.
Yes, yeah. And I started figuring out that certain notes sounded better than others, and so I started thinking about what key we're in and the chords and scales and stuff like that. So that was my intro to improvisation. Some years later, I traded my little brother a trumpet for an electric bass. And
you had a little instrument swap going on at home.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. And I started learning bass because at that point I was at North Texas State, and my roommate happened to be a bass player. So he showed me how to do it, and started doing gigs on that. And saw an ad on the bulletin board at school said flute for sale. So then somebody said, well, the fingerings are almost the same as the saxophone, so I figured I should be able to play that. So I learned how to play it. Getting the instruments was the hardest thing for me. If you just give me an instrument and a fingering chart, I can learn how to play it.
Well, you've definitely proven that. So over the course of your career, you're a fantastic jazz musician, which many people might not realize because a lot of your visible gigs and work have been with more commercial type projects like the Saturday Night Live Band and Paul Schaefer's project and the Blues Brothers. So how did you keep your jazz chops up while you were balancing that with the rest of your career, with the gigs that were really kind of your bread and butter?
Well, I started playing with Gil Evans in 1974, and we played all over the world, several tours of Europe and Far East Japan, 2 tours of Japan. One most memorable one was Gil Evans and Miles Davis in Japan, 1983. But Gil's gig was where you could really play whatever you wanted to and experiment, and Gil was a big mentor towards me, and we would hang out, and I'd ask him questions, and he kind of blew my mind with his creativity and freedom and the way he organized arrangements. So he was kind of a musical father to me, and that was my big claim to fame as far as real jazz is concerned. Also played with Billy Cobham. And Blood, Sweat, and Tears, I guess, was called a fusion band. But always loved jazz, and just like getting together with people and jamming. We used to do that in the early days in New York, just get together in somebody's loft and just play.
How important for these young musicians that want to be involved in improvised music and jazz is it to establish kind of those opportunities to be able to get together and jam and have these hangouts?
Well, that's how you learn, is by experimenting, by actually playing yourself, and by listening carefully to other people. I learned a lot by analyzing. I'd be fascinated by a solo by, let's say, Freddie Hubbard, and I'd write it down note for note and analyze it, and these chords are going on, and how do these notes fit in these chords, and started to coming to some understanding of some stuff that I thought was abstract. It's actually very mathematically derived in a way. Some people think of it as written music and math. Some people just play it off the top of their head.
Yeah, it's amazing how different people, how they're able to interpret the music. I know several musician friends of mine see notes as colors. Some of them see them as mathematical equations, and kind of, but it's really different for everybody, isn't it?
And it progresses as you go through life, because after you actually learn a song and your ear gets tuned to the chord progression, as opposed to thinking about chord symbols and stuff like that. Now, at this point in my career, the horn just sort of plays itself. If I can think of an idea, it'll just come out.
Comes out of the horn.
Yes, it's automatic. It's like driving a car or walking, right, for me. But the moving center of my body actually plays the instrument, and so I can just let the thoughts come out of my head. And there's always a melody coming out of my brain when I hear a rhythm section playing a chord progression. There's always something, and I just kind of tap into that, and it's like I'm not even there sometimes.
It's amazing. So, we've just spent several days here at the Jazz Education Network conference, and this year we've had more students than ever participating here, literally thousands of them. What's the most inspiring thing that you've seen from students at this conference, or maybe some of the past conferences you've been involved with?
Well, the level of performance of kids that I've heard this week it's just blown me away. At the high school level, particularly. Well, college level too. The level of jazz education just gets better and better, and we're keeping jazz alive in North America. This organization and schools, the kids get interested in jazz. The parents get interested in jazz. It expands the and radio. The jazz is being kept alive in North America, and it's a real treasure to the United States. It's the only unique art form. Now, my definition of jazz is any music that has improvisation in it.
You and me both.
Yes, it could be a reggae rhythm section, and I can play over that, or it can be Latin salsa, play over that, rock and roll, rhythm and blues. So I have a kind of a wide definition of what jazz is.
And I think that's the best definition. You and I are definitely on the same page with that regard.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Well, Tom, we've seen you at so many of these conferences over the years. I think you've been at all of them, haven't you?
I've only been to 25. I started at the IAJE 25 years ago in Chicago, and I haven't missed one. I'm a charter member of this organization. Proud to be.
Yeah, well, we appreciate seeing you here all the time, and your inspiration, all your contributions to the organization. And thank you for taking a few minutes to talk to me today.
It's always a pleasure to talk with you, Caleb.
Once again, this is Caleb Chapman with Tom Bones Malone, and this is Beyond the Notes.